Good afternoon. Well, it's afternoon for me anyway. If you don't know me, I'm Annika, and today I'm going to be talking about commonplacing because I've gotten at least 2 requests to talk about it. So, you know, who am I to deny you that? This is my Commonplace book. It's very thick. I got it for that reason so I wouldn't have to keep buying Commonplace journals. It looks kind of like a Bible because it says believe, but, you know, it is what it is. And underneath it, it says, I believe that the most beautiful thing is worth waiting and the sweetest fruit needs patience. Which isn't like making the most grammatical sense to me, but it's in small print, no one cares. As with my last video that I made about journaling, which I highly recommend checking out, you guys seem to love that. You know, it got so many more views than I was fully expecting. I was really happy to see that because, I don't know, it's just really nice to get validation that my ideas are, you know, resonating with people. And plus it was the product of, I think, multiple months of thinking about all of this. It usually takes me quite a while to be able to put things into words. Sorry, my point is, as with that video, I have notes that I'm going to be reading off of, so I will be looking down at that because I'm going to be real, I'm not the best at coming up with... Every time I film a video, something interrupts me. I live in like central Tokyo, right next to a police station, so I get sirens all the time. Oh my god. Anyway, I will be looking down because I need notes when I'm writing a video. I don't tend to script things. I try and explain them as best I can. As I think is the case with most people, I'm not the most eloquent just off the fly. I had a couple of people saying that I'm really good with the way I explain things, but that's the product of like quite a lot of thinking. I'm not going to be talking about the history of commonplacing in this video because I looked into it and it has like a huge history dating back to like ancient Greek, like Aristotle times. If someone deeply does want to know the history of commonplacing and they want it specifically from me and not from like any other YouTube channel that's covered it, I guess I can make a video. I'm just saying that I'm not going to be covering it in this one because that's going to take up quite a lot of time if I'm to do like a full deep dive into it. Another disclaimer, I think this video is going to be a lot less eloquently worded and a lot less sophisticated in the way that I explain things, just simply because as opposed to journaling, commonplacing isn't introspective in nature. That's one of the main distinctions. But because I'm not really talking about the self in this one, it's, you know, it's not going to have as many, I guess, insight. Not that I was like some bringer of insight with my last video, but I'm just saying that this one's going to be more so objective in its nature because that's just what it is. In terms of history, I'm just going to run by just the general idea of what a commonplace book is in case, you know, someone doesn't know. Then I'm going to talk about what type of things you can add to your commonplace journal just for like general inspiration. And I'm going to talk about tips and tricks, and finally some creativity exercises that I hinted at in my last video. So commonplace book is a way to combine all knowledge from anything in your life that you find interesting into one source. I did hear a couple of people in my last video talk about how they use different journals for, you know, different things that they write down, and I suppose that is possible. I don't personally do that just because I feel like that's going to be very overwhelming for me. I don't like the idea of having too many journals at once. I heard someone say 6 and I was like, I was baffled by it, but you know, it works for them, so who am I to say anything really? Because the main objective of all this is that, you know, it works for you and you have to kind of devise a system. I'm just going to be going by my system, which tends to be kind of the most common one, I'm fairly sure. Excuse the pun on that one. But basically, it's kind of similar to a scrapbook. I have heard that many people actually do like multimedia journaling, as in, for instance, printing out some of the things that I'm going to be running over, like the content that you tend to put in these books. Some people do run it like a scrapbook. I don't for the most part, just because that's always felt like a lot of effort to me. Also, I don't really tend to save images in my commonplace books. What I do is maybe, you know, I save most of my images on Pinterest or just in my like camera roll, but I do tend to write down, if I'm thinking about an image, I tend to write down my personal opinions about it, on what I like, what I dislike, etc. Unlike a journal, which tends to be like quite free-flowing, a commonplace book is organized. It has headings, subheadings, and it's also not usually chronological. I mean, I guess it can be if you really want it to be, but mine's not chronological, and from what I've heard, the majority of them aren't. And again, it's not introspective. It's like a memory bank, which is how I described it in my last video as well. And again, as I mentioned last time, it's something that's meant to be referred back to as opposed to an actual journal, which I don't tend to refer back to mine for quite a while after writing it initially, or like writing an entry initially. But these ones are, it's basically all of your knowledge combined. It's a physical storage of things that interest you, really. Often I tend to use the entries in mine to kind of fuel my inspiration for my creative projects, but I also do it for like planning. I write a shit ton of lists in there. So many lists. I'm a list girl through and through. Ooh. A list? Love it. In terms of things you can add, here's just a quick overview, right? Notes, lists, quotes, prayers, letters, poems, plans, tables, recipes, adages, and anything else you want to reference. In terms of notes, I would not recommend putting your school notes in. I would recommend taking notes on kind of supplementary teaching, things that you yourself are interested in and that you're not doing for an academic reason. I think you should keep that separate if you're in academics at the moment, if you're studying something. I tend to take notes on YouTube videos that I find really helpful or very informative. I tend to take notes on that, and I think that also counts as kind of teaching yourself things. So, you know, I class those as notes. That was a very quick rundown. I feel like that's self-explanatory, so I'm just going to get into tips and tricks. Some of these are going to be obvious, but I feel that I have to mention them nonetheless. For instance, please, for the love of God, put a title down. This is obvious, but I've seen some people not do this, and how do you expect to be able to organize your book without a title? Similarly, dates. Please date them. Again, it doesn't have to be chronological. I'm gonna be real, I mostly find that dating is kind of just fun to see when you did that. Similarly, as with journals, please get yourself a nice looking one. I know mine kind of looks like a Bible, but it works for me. I like the color, I like that it's hardcover so I can write on it easily. I like that it's thick. So please put some consideration into which one you choose, and also what stationery you write with, because sometimes some stationery is horrible. Looking at you, ballpoint pens. I would say dedicate a couple pages into kind of a brain dump for ideas that you can put in your commonplace. For instance, maybe list out the ones that I just said as, for instance, inspiration for what you can put in it, because I personally always forget that I can put certain things in here. I think it helps you jog your memory and remember that it doesn't matter what you put in here, you can put anything you want. In addition, I don't think you always have to carry around your commonplace book with you. I don't, because mine's hefty. The person who said that they use 6 journals, they said that I think they keep one on them and then they dedicate time on the weekend to copying them up into each individual, which I think is also a good way to go about it. However, if you just straight up do not want to carry one around, just, you know, copy up your notes app notes. Because this, I'm gonna be real, the commonplace book, it is basically your notes app, but I think there's something about referring to it as a commonplace book which makes it a lot more sophisticated, just because of maybe the history attached with it. Something about analog media, for instance, like writing by hand and having like an actual physical book, just changes your mindset about it so much, and it makes you kind of slow down and appreciate it a lot more. In addition, you know how when you take handwritten notes you have an easier time remembering what it is? I feel like that's probably the same with commonplacing as well. That's just my argument advocating for commonplacing as opposed to a notes app, because also my notes app is so messy. This is more of an organized mess, if that makes sense. Again, I actually do advocate for this, but I don't have a printer or glue or anything. But if you do have access to those, scrapbook. And I think it is genuinely quite helpful from what I've heard. Not that I don't think you should make your commonplace entirely into a scrapbook unless you really want to, but at that point call it a scrapbook, you know? But I think it is a lot more helpful to have a actual reference of an image in the book rather than just having it saved on your phone and having to refer back to it to be able to see exactly how your notes about, for instance, a work of art actually relate to it. My final tip is make a contents page. I organize mine by entry number, but in my last book I actually manually hand wrote the page numbers, so I used to organize it by that, but you know, this has I think maybe 700-800 pages, so I'm not doing all that. I'm gonna do a flip through of my book at the very end. I've just decided that now, but I think that might be helpful. In terms of creativity exercises, I actually don't have an example in this book because I just don't. I haven't used one of mine since I started this one. The reason I always find it hard to be creative is because I'm very indecisive with my inspiration. What I have found works very well is I maybe comb through my Pinterest or the actual Commonplace book, and I look for what interests me in that moment, right? So for instance, if I've got a bunch of Pinterest pictures that I'm using as a reference, I'll make a bullet pointed list with numbers of kind of which elements from which pictures I enjoy. So for instance, like which part of the artwork is particularly evocative to me. For instance, if you're using like quotes or just literature, poems, etc., I'll also just write that down as a numbered bullet point in kind of some abbreviated sense. I'll randomly generate maybe 5 numbers out of that list, and I'll challenge myself to, you know, create something that uses all 5 of those elements that inspire me. It's not, you know, it's not the most sophisticated creativity exercise, but it helps me because I'm so bad at making a single decision ever. I don't like decisions. Plus I think an element of spontaneity is always good for the brain, you know, a little bit of randomness. I mentioned earlier that you should make a kind of dumping site for your ideas of what to put in a Commonplace book. I meant that more so as kind of mediums you can put in. However, I think it is also entirely possible to make a brain dumping site for just ideas that occur to you. Just any idea. It doesn't even have to be a specific dumping ground, just write it down. Those are also always really good to take inspiration from. But I recommend in these kind of dumping sites, if you search up like prompts or just concepts and you write down the ones that appeal to you the most, I think that also tends to help. So it's not just, for instance, quotes from literature or poems or artwork or photography or any other medium that you have found inspiration in that you are, you know, writing down, but I think it's also vague concepts that you can incorporate into your work. That's my creativity exercise. It's nothing too impressive, but I think it's helped me a lot, so I wanted to share that. I'll give you a brief skip through of my journal, but I'm maybe gonna skip some things that's a bit too personal. Not that I write very personal things in here, it's just sometimes the things I take notes on are like kind of embarrassing. So, quick flip through, right? This is a poem I wrote. This is some life advice, more life advice, a book idea which you're not reading, a to-do list, video ideas, a packing list for when I moved to Japan, a plan for a habit tracker that I never did, some notes on an artist from Hungary, where I'm originally from, and how disconnected I feel from that culture, and how, you know, what I felt about her. Her name is Paya Bea. I'll put it up here because I don't know if English people can spell that easily. Some words that I need to fill in with the Japanese equivalent, just because I'm gonna be real, I'm not great at Japanese, I'm kind of struggling out here. A shopping list, notes on a YouTube video, some stuff that I had to make sure that I didn't leave in England, notes on cycle syncing, a little sketch that I didn't finish, notes on another YouTube video, more video ideas, a tarot reading for a scene that I was writing because I needed some inspiration as to what actually goes down, some quotes from Song of Myself by Walt Whitman, budgeting notes, styling tips, gratitude list, more quotes from Song of Myself by Walt Whitman, because it's such a long poem that there are so many quotes, so I have like 3 sections in this book so far just dedicated to that. More notes on YouTube videos, homework, a tarot reading about how to be less anxious in Japan, which basically told me to just calm the fuck down. A bucket list for things that I want to do in Japan because I feel like I'm wasting my time because I don't go anywhere. More YouTube video notes, another shopping list, sketches from my D&D character's masquerade ball that I did in like 2 minutes. It's not very good. Notes for this video actually. The tarot card reading on how I can improve my writing. and some more YouTube video notes. I really wish I had brought my original Commonplace book with me to England, but unfortunately I filled it just before coming to Japan. And that would be really great for me to give you more examples of what I put in there, but I know, for instance, I had recipes, photo shoot ideas, sketches of outfits that I wanted to recreate, a lot more poems than there are on this one. There were various other lists just tracking media that I'd consumed and that what I liked about them, what I disliked. For instance, I had one of all the albums I'd fully listened to because I got into like an album listening kick, which I never used to listen to full albums beforehand, but I got into it and I made like a whole list of all the ones that I'd listened to and all the books that I've read, all the books that I want to read. Previously I've made videos about like my favorite pieces of media of, for instance, the year, but if you guys want to hear one of my favorite media of all time, because I read quite a lot and I've been trying to watch more movies and listen to more films, it's kind of like an active habit that I wanted to start in my life for quite a while. I like to think I have decent taste. I'm doing this mostly in order to be able to develop my taste, because I think refinement and curation is the goal of life. Well, not the only goal, but one of them for sure. Plus, I think it's always good to be analytical about the media you consume, just to know why you like it specifically, which aspects you enjoy and enjoy not so much. And also I think maybe one person asked me for my favorites, so if anyone else is interested in that, I can do that for sure. I love to talk about my favorite things. I love giving recommendations because usually in my life no one listens to me. If I can give you one media recommendation right now, currently it would be Preacher's Daughter by Ethel Cain. I know I'm late to it, I know. I first listened to Ptolemaea 2 years ago and I did not know who Ethel Cain was until about a year ago. And I kind of put off listening to the rest of her music. I listened to a couple songs, to be fair. I listened to Gibson Girl and Family Tree, the intro one. I listened to the full album the other day and I was blown away. It's so good. It's so good. I really wish I'd listened to everyone else's suggestions about it and listened to it a lot earlier. My throat actually really hurts from talking this much. But those are some potential video ideas. Let me know if you guys want to see that, or if you want to see something different. I'm open to suggestions always. And if you like me, if you like my ideas, I know this video wasn't the most sophisticated one, but I don't believe that commonplacing requires too much thought. It's a fairly straightforward method. I think most of the contents revolves around your ideas of the works. I feel like it's self-explanatory why it benefits you. It just helps you think more critically about the things you enjoy, really. And it also kind of gives you a systematic approach to creation, which I think is one of the most noble pursuits you can go after. Anyway, if you enjoyed that, please subscribe. I feel a bit nervous. Since my last video I went from maybe 70 subscribers to I think around 600, which I feel like a lot of people would be like, oh my god, that's not a lot, but it is on YouTube. If you have 600 followers on TikTok, no one really bats an eye. On YouTube, it's like, I don't know, I view that as a bigger deal at least, so I don't know, I'm kind of proud of myself for that, but thank you so much. It is a bit more nerve-wracking, but, I can get used to that. I don't mind. The whole thing has given me a lot more motivation to actually start consistently making YouTube videos, because I enjoy it so much more than TikTok. I started doing TikTok about a year ago, and I first grew my following there. I feel like TikTok isn't conducive to getting to know the actual person behind it as much as, for instance, YouTube is, because the whole thing is that I talk here. I mostly do fashion videos there, actually. I know I've been focusing a lot on, for instance, like journaling and book videos, but please, if someone's interested in fashion, please, I really want an excuse to make a fashion video. Ever since I moved to Japan, like I didn't bring many clothes with me simply because they couldn't fit in my suitcase. But if you want to see that, let me know, because I will make it. I really want to. But thank you for watching anyway. Thank you. Let me know what you thought. I'm always interested in it. I love hearing feedback from people. See you. I love you. Bye.